It's 9 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Could I get approval of the county board minutes? That
So
were sent to
moved.
you?
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any further questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Could I get a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. County Staff Appreciation Day Proclamation. Deb, would you like to?
I would. Mr. Chair, we have a proclamation today for county staff. I think it would be best to start with just reading it if you guys will be
Yes,
okay with that.
go ahead.
Whereas county staff serve the cornerstone of this community, dedicating their time, skills, and expertise for the benefit of their neighbors. And whereas county staff went beyond expectations, taking on personal risks to continue delivering essential services to the citizens of our county during the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas, in addition to their regular duties, many county staff were called upon and accepted new and challenging responsibilities during the pandemic, such as expediting the distribution of thousands of dollars in economic recovery appropriations, empowering the survival of our local business community, successfully managing a deluge of mail-in ballots in an unprecedented federal election, and retooling local public health education outreach to flatten the curve. And whereas, although the state has turned the corner on the COVID-19 pandemic, county staff continue their exemplary work, assisting with recovery through vaccination rollouts and preparing for the American Rescue Plan's multi-year recovery effort. And whereas the work of county staff over the past year and a half have kept the doors of the county open and our communities safer, healthier, and productive throughout months of unprecedented global transition. And whereas President Svei and the Board of Association of Minnesota Counties requested the Office of Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan to proclaim July 27th, 2021 as County Staff Appreciation Day, and the request was granted. Now therefore, we, the Morrison County Board of Commissioners, proclaim July 27th, 2021 as County Staff Appreciation Day and extend our thanks to the staff of our county and express deep gratitude for their commitment to excellence in public service during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved, Mr.
Got a
Chair.
motion by Commissioner Jelinski. Seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I could just note that today, in an effort to celebrate and to say thank you to staff, we will have a food truck or two parked in the parking lot that staff can buy lunch for, and I bought some dessert for our staff as a personal thank you for myself, and county department heads chipped in, and we all brought some drinks, some water and soda for staff to participate in over the lunch hour, just as a thank you, because I think not only did the leaders step up, staff stepped up over the past year and a half, like the proclamation says, in an unprecedented way, and we really should be proud of the work we've done. I know I certainly am proud of them. So you can join in those festivities later today.
Yeah, and I also want to thank them for all the work they did. You know, we've talked about this before, especially with public health and stuff, with the training that they do and what happens if we really have a disaster. And sometimes you train for a long time, and I think everybody stepped up to the plate when we had this. So I do want to thank everybody. So anybody else got anything to say, Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I would like to add to this, but after listening to the proclamation, after reading the proclamation, after reading it earlier and hearing it again today, I don't know that there's anything else I can say. So thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, we got a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sheriff's report. Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning, everybody. Members of the chair. So yeah, we'll just kind of highlight June. It's been a busy month. You'll see the first photo
Hold
that
on
we
one
got.
second here. I need
I'm
to
sorry.
find my report. I have an old copy here. Just if you want to start, John, I will get this up and running.
Okay, so yeah, we just kind of highlight everything that's gone on through the month, and there's a picture that'll be rolling up. Somebody took a picture of Deputy Dan Rushlow starting a tractor. It was Bring Your Tractor to School Day in Pierce, so. It was a little birdie that sent me the photo, so I thought I'd throw it on our Facebook page. It got a lot of publicity. But if you can name the tractor and the year, you win a prize. So first commissioner to see the photo and let me know, you'll be eligible for a little certificate. If the picture ever comes up.
It's not green, I can't help you.
Hold on.
And it's gonna be orange in color.
Alice Chalmers.
There you go.
What year?
That I don't know. Before I was born.
Anyway, I'll continue to move on. We had so Deputy Sherping, as everyone's aware, he got certified with his canine got certified Bane. I know Morrison County Record did an article on it, and we threw it on our Facebook page. So Bane is a 1.5-year German Shepherd from the Czech Republic. Seems to be pretty anxious. He's working the road already now, and he's certified with criminal apprehension, tracking, as well as narcotics detection. So he's been doing a good job. So Rocky, his previous canine that he worked, is officially retired now and staying with him at his residence.
Did you want to go back? Commissioner Wincher, were you the lucky winner of the tractor contest?
Well, I didn't know the year, so.
Oh, so no, okay, all right.
So I get no prize.
Okay. well,
It's an early
it was
one.
a
We'll come
solid
back to
effort.
that
It
later
was
if
a
you
solid
guys
effort.
Can think
So
of
if I
it.
may, Mr. Chair, how old is this new dog after it's all done training? How old are they?
Well, this dog now is 1.5 years.
Okay.
If you scroll down, you'll see Sergeant Carrie Herman at the Minnesota Sheriff's Association Summer Banquet. She was presented a 2020 Medal of Commendation for her efforts. This is when there was an inmate on the railing in a cell block that was gonna jump. And Sergeant Herman was able to effectively communicate with the inmate and get him down for safety. So she was well deserving of that award, so we recognized her there, as well as at a previous county board meeting. As far as our training, we really, to highlight, we had handgun qual and rifle qual. And that's all of our officers from Morrison County as well as Little Falls. And so when we do our training, we have training officers from Little Falls PD as well as the Morrison County Sheriff's Office. So we bring in not only Morrison County deputies, but Little Falls peace officers, and then all the officers throughout the county. We all train through the same instructors, which is good because we work together on several calls. We're assisting each other quite a bit. So we definitely want to be trained on the same things, same techniques. So that's been going well. If you look at our criminal complaints, just to highlight kind of what's been going on in the county. If you look at the 3 o'clock position, the blue, we had disturbing the peace. We had 16 calls for service. 10 of those were harassing phone calls. If you look at the 6, 7 o'clock position in the green, we had 16 damage to property. 10 occurred at a private a private setting, and 6 were public. I can tell you, majority of the public were roadways. This time of the year, we unfortunately have ATVs that like to tear up the roadway, so our numbers kind of go up in that setting. And then the 9 o'clock position, the orange, we had 15 thefts, which isn't too uncommon. If you move on to our traffic citations, we had 23 citations that were issued for speed. That's going to be the green pie shaped up in the top. And we had 132 verbal warnings and 30 written warnings. If you look at our 2-year comparison, everything pretty much went up, I'm sorry. Drug investigations stayed the same. Total inmates went up, and of course, that's because we were dealing with COVID last year. So as far as that, our jail is wide open right now. There's still some jails that have restrictions, but we've pretty much lifted our restrictions, and we're taking in the misdemeanors again and we were having issues early on where we'd run into somebody if they had a felony warrant, and just because of the standards that we had to follow and our doctor's recommendations, we weren't allowed to bring them in. But everything's been lifted, and now everybody's coming to jail even on misdemeanor offenses. But again, there's some jails still operating and having their own rules. So there's times we'll run into somebody in the field, and if they have either a misdemeanor warrant or a felony warrant, depending on the county, we have to call that county to see if they'll accept them. But if we have no charges in Morrison County, there's nothing we can do on that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Total inmates, you'll see that we averaged 32 for the month of June. To include out-of-county inmates, we averaged 34. Sentence to serve, you can see we have total inmates 4. The hours worked was 135. I point that out because, we were running with a crew, especially during COVID. Sometimes one person would be on the crew, sometimes 2. So we can see it slowly going back up. I think some of the cases may have been prolonged due to COVID, and now we're finally seeing some sentencing going on where these inmates are sentenced now, and we can actually make some use of them. They've been busy painting curbs and parking lines in the cities of Bolus, Royalton, and Randall. They've also assisted with the Flinsburg ball field. They did some work out at the Crane Meadows. They've also loaded trucks for the New to You business, Little Falls. They've helped with the food shelf as far as loading trucks. I know when our squad cars are up for rotation, they've been taking the decals off, which have been saving us quite a bit of money in itself. So they've been busy, and I know they just had, I think it was the mayor of Upsala just highlighted them too for the work they did in the city of Upsala. So they do good things for our community, and I can tell you that a lot of people call from the community, some community leaders, and they're always requesting their assistance, which is good. So they make us all look good. Out-of-county inmates, we had 6 for the month of June, and we brought in $4,015. A little bit about our drug stuff going on. We've been having some issues. I can tell you that a lot of people will call and complain, but they will not follow up with information that we need. And what I mean by that is we've had people call saying, we got a major issue in this area of the county. And my advice to them is if it's ongoing, if you see short-term traffic, if you see illegal activity, you gotta call it in now. You gotta call it in while it's occurring. The problem is we're not getting those complaints while it's going on. And I think a lot of it is people are hesitant. They don't wanna get involved per se. They don't wanna leave their name. They don't want, the suspect to come after them or find out that information, which is understandable. But we also tell them that they can call in and remain anonymous as well, as long as we're getting the information at the time. I know there's been some drug information that's been given to us where I'll talk to the complainant and we'll try and push out like an undercover unit to try and monitor and get surveillance as to what's going on. And in some parts of the county, that's worked great. And we're accepted, but in some parts of the county, even though the complainant wanted that, we'll show up and then they're like, I don't like this. Try a different method. Don't use my residence, don't use my yard. What I'm getting at is some places are tough to set up to do surveillance. Obviously, we do drug stings, we do drug interdiction, but I can tell you as soon as we make a traffic stop, word gets out and movement just stops. And I think the word spreads fast. So we're trying different methods, but we're definitely doing everything we can. It's just, we need people to call, we need people to give us detailed information, and more specifically, we need that information as it's going on, not weeks later or months later. So we've been busy with search warrants. We're seeing some pressed fentanyl pills that's taking place now. That's kind of circulating in the St. Cloud area, but we also have information that it obviously goes through our county as well. So a lot of controlled buys. all over in Morrison County, to include Little Falls. We've assisted with controlled buys with other cities within our drug task force and other counties, and just been busy. So any questions on anything I presented?
Randy, Commissioner Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we got our county, since we got our county attorney here and the sheriff, if you're bringing up that people are hesitant to, call in, if I call in and there, I see something going on, what are the odds of my name getting used? And I guess I would fear that, okay, you prosecute, then the county attorney may call me in and say, well, what did you see as a witness? And that maybe for clarification for people out in TV land, what would make them feel more at ease that, hey, it's okay for me to call in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think at some point, law enforcement, the county attorney's office, I'll let Brian speak to that part, but we're gonna try and keep your name from getting out to the suspect, to the public. At the end of the day, we need the information so we can conduct our own investigation. However, at some point, if the suspect is caught in some illegal activity with the information that you provided, at some point, they may say, you know what, I want to take this to trial. I want to take this to court. And then at some point, you, as the person who called in the information which led law enforcement to the criminal activity to begin with, you may be asked to testify. And from there, Brian, if you want to kind of talk about it.
Sure. Normally, you do have the option of remaining anonymous. Call in and say they're observing certain activity occurring at a certain place. You don't have to give your name, your address, or phone number, anything like that. What's important is law enforcement has the information and they can conduct an independent investigation, in which case we wouldn't need the name of the person that called it in, because everything we would need would be coming from law enforcement after they conduct their own investigation.
And to follow up on that, now when you call somebody, obviously it's what they call, you can identify who the caller is, so really, what does it matter if I don't give it? Because you're gonna probably know who I am and where I'm calling from. Is that?
We're going to respect the wishes of the person if they call in, and even if there's caller ID and we have that information, if they don't want to be listed and they want to remain anonymous, we're certainly going to abide by that.
So bottom line, if they request to be anonymous, they can do that and make them a little bit more at ease to see if they see something not.
Absolutely. Our biggest thing is in law enforcement is we're kind of on the front lines, and we're interacting with community members throughout our entire county all the time, and we hear about issues, and we hear about certain names that get brought up, but we're not getting those phone calls while that activity they're talking about is going on. And, it's important to note we have a drug tip line that can be used 24/7. I can't say it's monitored 24/7, it's monitored daily. In other words, the voice messages are checked. So that's information where, if someone's telling a deputy in the field, hey, this is what's been going on, I've seen this the last couple of weeks, that's information for the drug tip line. But if it's information where it's like they're witnessing firsthand short-term traffic, or they're witnessing some ongoing illegal criminal activity that's taken place, that's where we need the phone call immediately to our dispatch center so we can do something about it immediately.
Good information, thank you.
Brian, could you explain, we get a lot of questions sometimes where somebody gets picked up for drugs, let's say, and people will say, geez, they're out on the street so fast. Could you explain the process that, how long we can hold people, more investigation going on, they go to court later? Could you explain that process so that people kind of understand that?
Right. There's a lot of factors that play into that. Sometimes we can't charge someone right away. We do need more information, in which case we do have to release them while there's follow-up being done, and then we file charges at a later time. So that may be part of it. But the bottom line is everyone is entitled to be heard in court within a period of time, usually 48 hours, and everyone's entitled to bail, and that's a decision that's made by the judge. The judge imposes bail with release conditions designed and intended to protect the public, For a drug offense, that's normally in order to abstain with random testing that's conducted or testing on demand of law enforcement, so they can be tested at any time on demand. And that's designed to protect the public while the case is pending, and everyone's entitled to that, some fair bail amount that's set by a judge after their first appearance. And so that's why they may be released, but they are being monitored.
Sounds good, thank you. Does anybody have anything else? Do you have anything else, Sean, or?
I don't think so. Any updates? I've been trying to email the board as to what we're seeing or what's going on, but I think we're good.
You've emailed us a little bit that we have some people over in Wadena County helping with the pipeline situation, so that going okay and stuff?
Yes.
Good, and thank you for working with that,
Absolutely.
so.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Sheriff, have a good day. You guys too.
Next, extension report. Welcome.
Morning, Samantha.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
All right, so I have a very brief report. So in the month of June, I did a 3-day virtual Minnesota Lifestyle Coach Conference. So been a certified lifestyle coach since 2015. So basically, it allows me to teach the CDC's diabetes prevention program throughout the state of Minnesota, and of course, I primarily focus out in Morrison County. With COVID, we've been teaching that virtually, so this conference allowed tips and tricks from what we've learned the past year, we're having to suddenly transition to an online format, and how we can continue that online format, even if, say, Minnesota winters, we can do hybrid models now, so maybe teaching in person and then maybe switching to virtual on bad weather days, or if something comes up where people can't attend in person. So it was a lot of great information at that conference, and I hope to apply it, in the future, starting this fall when we get back to programming in person with some of these diabetes prevention classes I hope to continue to offer. I did a food safety training for the Oasis Share Meal program. They started offering to-go meals. I think the 15th of July was their first one. Sounded like they had pretty good turnout. Not quite as much as they usually get, but I think with the first one since COVID hit, they were pretty much expecting some smaller numbers. So what I did did a virtual online sort of food safety training for their volunteers, just to get them comfortable on safe food handling practices, especially how that applies to-go meals, and even some tips for when they do transition back into person, just so they're all more comfortable with food handling and any sort of situations that could apply, whether it's COVID or not. Their food safety standards, have basically remained the same, so just kind of a refresher training for some of those volunteers. I did the first farmers market tour at the farmers market in Little Falls. That actually turned out really well. I had a full class, and they were all new to the farmers market, and they had a lot of great feedback. They really enjoyed the tour, the information provided. They're really excited that they were able to, that the farmers market now has an EBT machine and can spend some of their SNAP dollars there. And they all plan to continue to come back, so we're hoping to see an increase in the use of the farmers market, and a lot of those vendors, I think some of them even said they were planning on going to music and markets on the Mississippi, those Thursday events, which have become very popular. I've continued to reach out and assist with the food shelves around the county. So any sort of technical assistance they need, volunteer training, some guidelines for, transitioning to opening back up fully in person for safety reasons and how that's gonna work. Every food shelf was kind of at a different point. Some of them have been opened up for shopping in person for a while. But, it's just some help with anything they may or may not need, sort of help with that transition. And especially now that Extension has now transitioned into fully in-person classes as of July 1st. That's kind of slowly taking form for me, just because at this point in the summer, I had most of my summer programming and stuff kind of figured out, so I'm just kind of planning for the fall and how that's gonna look in person. So for example, the Juvenile Justice Program, I worked with them in June to set up a class for the teen group, We set it up to meet virtually July and August, and we'll transition to an in-person class at the, never remember the name of the house next door that they use. That social services uses.
Oh, right.
Okay, thank you.
The corner house, I don't know if
That was
there's a technical name.
It was like, I don't know if it has a name, but thank you.
You had the right name.
So, starting September, we will transition to in-person cooking classes with that group there. But,
Nice.
so for July's class, I think they actually had it in the boardroom here, and I think August's class will be in this room as well, and we just kind of do a virtual. It's a little different, I mean, cooking's a little bit different. I kind of do like a demonstration, and I kind of have them try to follow along with me via the computer, but it's not quite as, I think, interesting and fun for them if it's not in person. So it'll be fun to kind of get back in the rhythm of doing things in person.
Mr. Chair, thanks for opening that up. That's a great use for that place. So that partnership is fantastic. I didn't realize that was occurring. That's awesome.
We did a class there, I think, 2-3 years ago.
Oh, yeah? Good.
I'm thrown off with COVID.
Yeah.
It was before COVID, I want to say, but yeah. I can't exactly, I think about 2, maybe 3 years ago, we did a class there, and teens loved it. They
Yeah.
got really into the cooking part. That was their favorite part, so we tried to just focus on that, and I try to sprinkle in that helpful nutrition information while they're, learning to chop vegetables and, cooking on their own. What else? Not a whole lot for June, I guess. I'm gonna start working out with, again, starting to work with planning my fall programming. I reached out with schools a couple weeks ago. We're starting to think about what's fall gonna look like. They're still not fully sure on how that's gonna look like for programming, but they still liked a lot of the programs we set up distance-wise last year, like the fitness calendars that we sent home and the weekly wellness tips we did. So they want to do those again. So we'll set those up for this coming school year, and we'll see how in-person programming will look for the schools. And then I'll do some more adult classes and wherever else with the community.
Good.
Any questions?
Anybody got any questions? I suppose you're busy with all the county fairs around the state too.
I don't really do much with the county
Don't
fair. This year, we're gonna set up to promote One Vegetable, One Community. We didn't do it this past year with COVID and kind of struggling how that would work, but we got a lot of feedback and people asking for it, so the county fair, we're setting out voting cards so people in the community can vote for the vegetable they want to use this year, want for next year, and that's pretty much, I think we have Birdie Peterson, I can't remember where she's set up for, she's at the farmer's market, and a few other places around town will put out these little voting cards for people to vote for what vegetable they want.
Okay, well, thank you. Very good. Thank you very much. If nobody's got any other questions, we thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, Public Health and Social Service Report. Brad, Teresa, and Fran.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning.
How's everybody today?
Good morning, Fran.
Good.
Morning, Lisa.
So we are here just to talk a little bit about the activities at the front desk, because we know this past year has been somewhat unique. And so I thought it'd be good for Fran and Teresa to share some information about what's been going on at the front desk.
All right, so we started off May of 2020 with 2 produce drops that it was free produce for the residents of Morrison County. It was all filtered through the front desk staff who took all the calls and registered all the people who wished to receive this free food. So the office support staff from both agencies answered and logged 801 calls. That was for our first produce drop. Fran spent quite a lot of time setting up the computer format to gather the needed information from residents so that a successful and safe drop could be made to them. We used Microsoft Excel and found that it was a bit cumbersome to gather the totals. So we did some research, and for the second produce drop, we took advantage of the Microsoft Forms software and created a form that office support staff could quickly enter the needed information into. And the system did all the behind-the-scenes work of tallying the information. So it was a quick form as people had their headsets on and they were, what's your address and do you have any specific instructions? Because at that time, it was kind of a hands-off. They dropped it by the garage and people did there was no contact. So we found that through some diligent work with some looking into different software that we could actually save a lot of staff time. So that was,
And numerous staff can be in it at one time, so it was a live format.
yep, so that was kind of a win-win for us. And the second drop was May 14th, and our numbers were down just a little bit, but we did log 734 calls within a 10-day period of time. So our phones were quite busy. That was in addition to our regular activities that were going on.
Right. Yeah, we had numerous calls and a lot of frequent changes, sometimes even daily. Things would change as to which groups of residents were eligible to get the vaccine. So we were constantly letting the front desk staff know who they could add to their lists. And it really helped that the public health phones rolled over to the social service phones so that everyone could be involved and we could get numerous calls through. We ended up scheduling for 35 vaccine clinics, and in those clinics, we registered 1,157 residents, and they were for a number of 2,314 appointments because, of course, we had to do the first and the second dose of the vaccine. We used the Bookings app and the Adobe Sign program, both of which worked very well. And I'd certainly like to thank the ID department for their collaboration and knowing of these different programs to use and then helping get us trained, and then we could take over once we were trained and we could set up the clinics throughout the rest of the time. So we really do appreciate their work with us, and our systems ran much smoother than many of the other counties. So we definitely, that was definitely fortunate for us.
Okay, the next slide. One of the exciting things for the social service office support team was the ability to help out the Department of Motor Vehicles here at the county. There was quite a backlog due to whatever. But anyway, we were excited to be able to help them out. So during the time period of June through November, the first part of November, we averaged 42 DMV calls per day and 40 social service calls per day. So our staff were quite busy during that time, making appointments plus taking on our own calls. But I really believe it helped the motor vehicle department to kind of get over that hump. And we heard great news from the public that they were glad someone was there to answer their phones and make their appointments. So, and it was a growth opportunity for social service staff to work in another software program. So we appreciate that we were able to do that.
Mr. Chair, I just have to jump in because that's one thing that I really appreciate about Morrison County is that when there is a need, everybody steps up and takes care of that. And there wasn't even a second guess when I said, hey, can you help? And they all said absolutely. And so that says a lot to staff and says a lot to their leadership. So thank you.
Next slide are the public health office support team calls that were taken during COVID. I calculated these from March when COVID started March of 2020 and went through basically the end of June this year in 21. And our daily calls for COVID were like 44% of the calls that came in on a daily basis during that time were for COVID. The remaining was public health calls, which were mostly WIC and environmental health at that time because we were pretty much closed during part of that time. So.
Another exciting venture for the social service office support team was the fact that we imaged all of our sealed adoption files. So this had been on our back burner, and when it was quiet during COVID, we took advantage of that quiet time, and it was a lot of work. We had to open each file and do some research, and but we have all of the sealed adoption files imaged. There were 525 of them. They were previously stored in paper form in locked file cabinets. Again, as Fran had mentioned, I'd like to thank the IT department and our parent company of our electronic document management system, ISC out of Fargo. worked closely with both of them to make sure that our imaging system was secure and that these sealed files would be secure with many restrictions put on them. So we were able to accomplish all of that. Some of the outcomes of that, the social work staff now have easy access to needed information. The adoption information is protected within our electronic document management system. Fragile original paper documents and photographs were imaged and will no longer age and become brittle. The paper has been shredded, the file cabinets have been sold on the county auction or repurposed by other county departments, and floor space has been freed up for future use. So,
Do you remember the oldest file you saw or imaged?
I think it was back from the 1930s.
So we have to keep these
Almost 100 years.
forever.
Forever, so.
Good job.
It was, can I share about the adoption
You
book?
can, go ahead.
This was kind of one of the files I opened. Here was a baby book that the foster parents had kept on their foster child. They had this foster child for a year. And Brad and I talked, and certainly it needed to go back to this child. So through some research, I was able to track down this child and get in touch with her.
Not a child anymore.
No, my age, right, not a child anymore. But we were able to return that.
Excuse me,
book-
your age, over 18.
Yes.
Yes, sure. Thank you. But I was able to call her and talk with her, and we were able to return that baby book to her.
Wow, that's great.
Cool.
That was probably the highlight. That'll probably be the highlight of my career, is the fact that
Yeah.
something that we had stored throughout this process, we uncovered, and, you know, they're precious photos of her.
Precious memories
Oh,
of
yeah.
her.
That is
Yeah, that's
absolutely
great.
cool.
Yeah, it was just, and the foster mom had written special things in there about what milestones she had reached, and so anyway, it was just such a blessing to be
Very
able to
cool.
do that, so. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing.
We're doing it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Social service phone calls to the front desk. As expected, we are down a little bit this year just because of the waivers that are on the programs and so on. People have not had to really be concerned about their cases closing or what verifications they needed to turn in, so our numbers are a little bit lower this year.
For the public health calls coming into the front desk, the average per day, of course, is down in 2020 as well for us because of being closed part of the time and not doing in-person visits during that time. And 2021 is going up a little bit, but I think that's due to scheduling all the 35 COVID clinics that we did. And that was January through June, so those calls would be up. And now we're scheduling again for an August clinic, so.
As expected, the average number of clients visiting our social service front desk is down. Again, because of the waivers, people did not have to bring in their verifications to keep their assistance going. We are seeing, since I did track these numbers, we are seeing an increase as some of the waivers have ended. Many of them are ending, and people are becoming a little more concerned about the status of their cases. So we are seeing more people come in and request to see a worker.
Most of the waivers are gonna end August 31st, except some that were, some flexibility for telehealth was drafted in this legislative session, so, but it doesn't negate the fact now that clients are gonna have to continue to update household report forms, have their min-choice assessments regularly, those kinds of things. So things should start to tick up now for sure in the month of August as individuals get their notices that they have to start doing their household report forms and things like that, so.
As well, the average number of clients visiting the public health front desk were also considerably down, especially for 2020, because of being closed and not doing the in-person visits, all of which was done via telephone. So it's really down, and it still continues to be down in 2021 because we still do not do in-person WIC, and which hopefully will change, by the end of the year. But for now, we're still doing phone calls. And most of the MCH is phone calls as well.
All right, so looking to the future for our front desk activities. Our waiting room now holds the new furniture once again, so we're all excited about that. Waivers are ending, clients are coming to our front desk to apply for services.
And the WIC clients are slowly starting to walk back in. We're seeing a few more of those versus calling. So, and like I say, we anticipate, sometime later this year, we'll probably be doing in person again.
Phone calls are increasing as questions arise regarding the waivers that are ending. One huge thing for us, fingerprinting activities will resume August 1st with a new DHS fingerprint vendor. So we are in the process of securing the needed equipment and doing the training for that.
That could be a significant undertaking because of the backlog of background studies, fingerprinting that has to be done for licensed facilities and nursing homes, so we'll see how this goes. I know we as a directors group in the state have talked about trying to do a better off-ramping process, so not everybody's coming in at once to get their fingerprint. So hoping that they kind of lay these out so it's not all at once and it's more of an organized fashion, but there's a significant number of fingerprints that have to be done above 60,000, I think, in the state.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Brad, Teresa, and I don't know that you even know the answer to this, but does every social services, public health division throughout the state, are they connected with this DHS vendor? Or are there just some counties? We are, I got that, but as an example, is Todd County? I don't know. And if they aren't, do we help them?
So not all counties are choosing to do this. We chose to do this a couple years ago, and
Yep.
Sourcewell gave us the grant because we felt it was a benefit to our community and our providers so that they could get the employees they need. Looking around the region, Todd County tried to get a machine. They were unable to. They are limiting the number that can be within certain number of miles, so we'll see how this goes. So we will try to help out Todd County. I know Crow Wing County is gonna have one, but not all of them are doing it.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Final thing is office support staff will be scheduling telehealth visits as we partner with UCare to bring new technology to Morrison County, which will assist our residents in meeting their medical and mental health needs. So we have two of our interview rooms that we have set up as telehealth rooms. People in some outlying areas of Morrison County may not have the high-speed internet that they need to make their telehealth visits with their providers. So we are partnering with UCare to bring that here to Morrison County and allow people to schedule our interview rooms and complete those needed services.
Yeah, so we're actually UCare's first conversation in trying to do this, so we're excited. We'll see what kind of activity it has, but we do know that there have been residents that have not had access to high-speed internet and not been able to see their medical professional therapists, whatever the case might be. So we just signed the contract. They will start to advertise for their clients on UCare. So, and again, that is one of our PMAP plans. So it's not, all 30,000 residents have access to UCare. They are the largest PMAP health plan that we have. But they're trying to, again, create opportunities for their residents to get the needs they met that they have, so. One other thing I'd like to share, unless you have questions about this report. So, I have permission to share this, that this will be Fran's last county board meeting. She is retiring the end of the year, so I know it's not even close yet, but Fran and I have been talking quite a bit about how to replace that position, and one of the reasons I looked to combining the budgets for public health and social services was to think about some of these transitions that are gonna happen. So I am looking at bringing Fran's position back, but repurposing it. As you could see in this report, there were a number of technology things that have occurred within our organization, and we are one of the larger organizations and somewhat of a strain on IT at times. And so I've talked with Amy, And what I'm looking at doing is bringing back to the board permission to repurpose this to an IT planner / business position that would work with office support. So I just want to give the board a heads up. I don't have anything today, but I'm going to come in one of the next couple of planning meetings to ask permission to start to complete this position description and then having to get it rated. And then Teresa will be supervising the entire front desk, all the staff at the front desk, so.
Wow.
So thank you, Fran.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Fran.
Fran, I've known you for a very long time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
A question I have, the front desk, how has the remodel, with everybody up front and putting social service and public health, has that worked well with all the staff that's up there and stuff to help people when they come in if somebody's gone from one area or?
We're
Working.
Yeah, we are working on that. We have operated as two separate agencies under one roof.
Okay.
But now looking forward to the future, we are starting the cross-training process. So the ultimate goal will be that no matter who is at the front desk, they will be able to serve public health needs and the social service needs. So we have started that cross-training process.
Good.
So that's kind of a one-stop shop, I guess,
Yeah.
is what you'd want to call it, that we want to be able to help whoever comes up, and it doesn't matter who they approach at the front desk, we all know the same information and we all share the same information in
I like
helping them.
it.
So the remodeling for that aspect has gone very well, yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, we were in a whole 3 months before COVID really hit, so that's been the
I
other unique
suppose.
Yes.
Yeah,
dynamic
right.
about
true.
that, so.
Okay, does anybody have any other
Just-
questions, Commissioner Lemire?
Do you have any COVID updates?
Yep, I was gonna just share a couple things, as Fran had mentioned. We are going to do another vaccine clinic here at the county boardroom. We have some vaccine that is still within our possession and is set to expire in October, so we thought we would do one more push to try and use up this vaccine. It's hard to transfer it to anybody else because we all have vaccine. As we know, there's some vaccine hesitancy. Hopefully with the Delta variant and some of the information out there, it might encourage people. We have about 140 doses, so we can do about 70 doses on August 5th, and then the second dose would be September 2nd. Today, our case rate is about 7. It's ticking up a little bit. So there were, I think, 24 individuals in the last 14 days who tested positive. I know when Cindy left on vacation on Friday, we talked about it. It is going to tick up because we had a number of days over the last 14 days where there were 0. So now you just get 1 or 2, it's going to tick up. So the vast majority are unvaccinated who are getting COVID. There are a few breakthrough cases, and everybody in the hospital has not been vaccinated, so at this point. So we are seeing an uptick as well as we've heard, so.
Mr. Chair, who's going to be eligible for your vaccination clinic?
This will only be 18 and up. We have Moderna, and it is not for yet the 12 to 16 that has not been approved, so.
So anybody that's.
Yep,
within
anybody
the-
18 and older, just call, make an appointment, no insurance needed. Hoping this one push will at least get rid of our vaccine so that it's been put to good use.
Very good, thank you.
Good, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, Brad, is it safe to say that although we have turned the corner, that based upon the news last night, based upon print news today, there is an uptick? And if there's an uptick statewide, we're obviously going to see an uptick statewide. We're in Morrison County, in the state. There's no projections, I don't think, out there, as to what could happen in September, November, January at all that I'm aware of. Or
Yeah, no, nothing that I know of at this point. I was gonna say something when you had meant something you started out, but, we are gonna have a phone call with the schools, in August, just to answer questions, have a conversation, just, they're all thinking about it. They know that there will be stressors on educators, kids, teachers, and just, making sure that we're all here to support each other as kids go back to school this fall. So we're scheduling that,
Thank you for doing that.
yeah.
Sounds good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good
Very
day.
much, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Community Corrections. Nicole. Welcome.
Hello.
Morning, Nicole.
Little narrow.
Oh, you didn't go over.
Good morning.
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 Before you in your packet is a joint powers agreement with the state of Minnesota, and it encompasses the BCA and Department of Public Safety. These are the standard forms that we fill out every 4 years, from what I'm gathering. So we can set our clock by every 4 years. These agreements will happen so that we continue to have access to the BCA for our background checks, Department of Public Safety for driver's license checks, so that we can do criminal histories, bail studies, all that fun stuff. So, years ago, when we broke up from the 3-county joint powers system, I came before you because the BCA and the state of Minnesota required that I be a designated signer for these forms. And just in case they have amendments, addendums, and all the other things they like to add on throughout the years. And so I have previously been designated as a signer, and I'm requesting for that to happen again. And the chair of the county board will also need to sign these forms so that we can continue to move forward with business.
Good.
We need a motion, I
Mr.
think.
Chair, I'll
on
make a
that.
motion to approve this.
Okay, we
I'll
got a
second
motion
it.
by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Easy
Excellent.
peasy.
Pretty painless, Nicole, thank you.
Absolutely. I don't know that we need to go through each one. It looks like Deb will also need to sign as the clerk on these forms.
Mr. Chair, I assume that motion meant sign the agreement and then also sign the designation to have that done, is what I
Yep.
felt you
absolutely.
meant.
That's what I meant.
That's what you meant.
Thank you.
You're probably
I read
happy
your
to
mind, I
sign
knew.
Rogers today, huh? Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, next we got Veterans Service. Kathy?
Do something with the government, how long it is.
I knew there was
20-some
a motion, I
pages
just didn't know if it was done yet.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Kathy.
So mine's fairly quick and simple as well. It's that time of year to accept the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs Operational Enhancement Grant. That's the $10,000 grant that we get from them each year. And so we have the resolution to adopt this today. And then what'll happen a little differently this year is then we will have, once we have that signed, we submit that to the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, and then they will send us the agreement to be signed as well, and that will be electronic. We don't need the seal this year either because everything's electronic. And our focus this year will remain pretty much the same as last year, reaching out and letting people know who we are, what we do, and then also some focus on the increase of mental health and addiction issues that we have and homelessness. So that is it. Any?
Second.
By Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm assuming as you being the chair, you read that 78 page, so we're
Oh,
not
yes,
getting.
yes, we got that done.
Is it all in here? It is, isn't it?
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kathy, thank you for all the work you
Have a
do.
Thanks,
great
Kathy.
Yeah, you did. I like it.
We'll have to realize what. 78 pages.
Auditors report. Welcome, Chelsea, and
Good morning.
Good morning.
One thing that's not in the agenda today is I have Julie Solberg here with us. She's our newest hire in the Auditor Treasurer's Office. She's been with us for almost a month. Comes to the county with great government background experience, financial background, and budgeting, so she's a huge asset to our office already.
Awesome. Welcome.
Julie?
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
I informed her that I have a few
And you
things on
can
the
come anytime you
list.
want to. You don't have to be shy. You can come anytime.
Thank you.
So first on the board agenda, I have a request for approval for the Lincoln Scandia Valley Lions Club to hold a bingo on October 2nd of this year, located at Pine Ridge Golf Club in Motley.
Make a motion to approve, Mr.
Motion
Chair.
by Commissioner,
Second.
or seconded by Commissioner Lozinski. Any further questions?
Legends.
Lozinski.
That's a new, that's okay. I got you. We knew what you meant.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next on the agenda, I have second quarter reports. So this again shows the bank balances, investments, and accruals. So on a monthly basis, we break down our cash book. And so you've seen this report before, but I like to bring it forward to you just to see where our accounts and our funds are at. As you can see, if you look at the balance totals, they kind of grow over the months, and that's because we were doing tax collection in second quarter and then paying out settlement. And a little bit different from last year to this year, or even years prior, is we had a little bit more money in our investments rather than in our liquid accounts on the top. So since last year, where we're at with economics in the world, interest rates have fallen tremendously, and we all know that. And so we have our brokers who can, normally give us the best rates. And so they have been calling. We have Edward Jones, Wells Fargo, Magic. We also have Unity Bank, who has a CDARS program, and most of them can offer the same CD offers. So once we have that investment, or if we already have that investment, we can't reinvest in that particular CD. So the market's really tight right now as far as investments. And if you look countywide within the state, I think you'll see that a lot of the counties have more liquid revenue rather than investments right now. So just kind of a snapshot of that. And then the next page, I do have the second quarter interest report. So I did look back at last year in 2020, and we're about half of where we were last year. Our total quarterly interest for second quarter is just shy of $30,000, and last year we were at about $60,000 for interest for quarter two. And again, that is because the interest rates are trickling down. We had a lot of investments that were callable CDs. We talked about that, where we had many that were gaining great interest rates, and then they got pulled, they got called. So then they paid out and they didn't reach the maturity that they could have. And that's the game you play when you do the callable investment CDs. But just an overall view of where we're at. Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
I actually have one. If we look at that form, we go to the, under the last page, on the top, E911, we have $1.89, we have 77 cents, and we have $1.
Yep.
What, I could just kind of, what's
Yeah.
that all? What is that?
So that is the interest that was accrued in that month for the funds that are in that account. So if you flip back to the page prior, in the special accounts, you'll see right below the total special accounts line item, Magic E911.
Yep, gotcha.
We have to have separate
Got it.
account
Thank
for
you.
that. But then you can see that the funds in that account are much less than other accounts. And so that's where
Yep.
you can get our breakout for interest.
I missed this piece right here.
That's
all.
okay.
Got it.
That's a
Thank you.
good question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, you brought up, and I know, to shop around these banks. I sit on a different board. We're pulling all of our money out of Magic because now, I know we switched to Magic here because they're higher, but now we found out that they're one of the lowest ones, whether low interest rate. And do you shop around too, or, as these CDs or whatever come due, we're gonna shop around again, and Magic is not paying anything anymore.
That's correct. So Magic isn't paying much, same and similar with our brokers. And so when we look at our funds that we have to be FDIC assured, and we also have to maintain our investment policy where we're collateralized at 110% at all times. And so while it's always nice to move money and go to where we can invest, we also have to look at making sure that we have collateral in place in case that bank were to fold. So we have certain credit unions where they won't take more than $250,000 because they can't collateralize. And then we would be at risk and we wouldn't be maintaining our investment policy that we have. So that is something that I look at every month as far as where our collateral is with our banks. I have actually reached out to some banks, smaller banks, and asking them what their rates are at and if I can move money over, if we can bump up our collateral. And right now, some of them don't want it.
Yeah.
Because it costs them money too, so.
But at least you're keeping, ahead of the game, and I appreciate that. So.
That's right. Thank you.
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chelsea. Thank you for the report. I got a kind of a two-part question. The ARP money that Morrison County would receive from the federal government, we've received, or have we received that first installment of that? And where is that money being held now? Is that held within the organization's funds within house, or is that in an investment account here, or where is that placed?
Sure. So we have received the first half of the ARPA funds, so a little over 3.2 million, and that currently is being held in the Magic Fund, which is gaining interest. So one thing that I came forward to just recently was to open a separate account within Magic specifically for those funds, because any interest that is gained on top of those funds have to be specifically used in the same order that the ARP funds are directed to.
Very good. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, we're in the process of transitioning that. All the information right now is in my name, and I'm the registered contact for the ARP funds with the U.S. Treasury, so I'm working with Chelsea to get that transitioned, and hopefully that can go smooth. We're going back and forth a bit, but that's the plan in the coming weeks, obviously, to get that in her name.
So to that point then, the treasurer of Morrison County then will be the holder then of those funds going forward, is that right?
Would have regardless, because she was. So she's
Yep.
banking, and we communicated back and forth on, I was the one who was authorized as the designated party and the contact information with the U.S. Treasury in that process to accept the funds. I need to transition that, given Chelsea's the best choice to continue on with that because Steve is leaving also. So it's one of those where that's what we're working to transition to. But the treasurer and Chelsea was always the holder of the money as far as the banking contact with that. But it's the contact through the U.S. Treasury, and then the follow-up with reporting and the designated authorized person to receive communication. I'm trying to get that transferred over.
Super, thank you.
Chelsea, when you say the banks are insured like up to $250,000 by the federal government, you can give bank more money, but then they have to give you collateral, right?
Correct.
To be able to, that it's always insured.
That is correct. Yep.
Yep,
So
okay.
if you look at our first page with investments, let's see here. If you look at Unity Bank on the investment portion on the bottom, the CD/CDARS program, we have over 250,000 there, and that is as we're in the CDARS program, but we also have collateral updated. And again, we have Farmers and Merchants Bank down in the bottom as well as far as investments, and they hold collateral for us, no different than Randall State Bank, lots of local banks that we have within Morrison County are holding collateral. Some can't offer collateral, but then they offer a line of credit.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody got anything else for Chelsea?
The next report comes to you monthly. Again, this report Steve puts together. This is our funds by breakdown of what bucket the funds are in. So again, every single month, we balance to the cash bank's investments, so we have to make sure that we tie out down to the cent on our banks along with all of the funds that are listed. And then as far as you can look at from current month to last year, the totals, the 42.2 million and then the 37 million. Again, we have the difference from last year to this year because one, we retained about 2 million in CARES funding, and then we also have the 3.2 million in ARP funding. So that is where that large difference is from. And again, that's in the line item, the first line item for revenue.
Thank you. Any questions on that, anybody? Okay.
Next on the agenda, I have a request to do a banking business with Stearns Bank of Upsala, in addition to requesting approval to add Stearns Bank of Upsala to the Morrison County designated bank depository list. So I would just like to add, as Commissioner Winter had asked if we're looking at different banks and options and moving money, I had Julie here step to the plate for me and do some calling and some rate checking. And one that she had brought to my attention was Stearns Bank of Upsala had a pretty decent CD rate that they could offer, and we don't have them listed currently as a bank depository for Morrison County, so I would like to add them.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the designated depository bank list for Morrison County funds. So this is just a listing of all of the banks that we do business with.
You need a motion on that? Yeah. Could I
So
get-
moved, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Blaine. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next on the agenda, I'm requesting approval of the delegation for authority to make electronic funds transfers and to authorize the appointee listing. If I could read the resolution. It is delegation of authority to make electronic funds transfers, whereas Minnesota Statute 471.38 allows for the use of electronic funds transfers, a means of making various payments. And whereas electronic funds transfers are the process of value exchange via mechanical means without the use of check, drafts, or similar negotiable instruments. And whereas the use of electronic funds allow for greater efficiency and security in the payment of certain claims. And whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners shall annually delegate the authority to make electronic funds transfers to the county's chief financial officers. Now therefore it be resolved, the Morrison County Board of Commissioners hereby formally delegates the authority to make electronic funds transfers on behalf of Morrison County to the Auditor Treasurer and the Finance Director and their designees. And on the next page, I have our authorized appointees. So in accordance to the Morrison County Electronic Funds Transfer Policy and the Minnesota Statute 471.28, the appointees listed below are hereby authorized to initiate EFTs on behalf of Morrison County, which is myself, my Deputy Auditor Treasurer, Debbie Joyce, our Account Specialist, Election Administrator, and then Derek Poser, our Account Specialist. And then, as you can see, we have added Elizabeth, our HR Manager, and Melissa, our Payroll Specialist, for payroll purposes only.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by
I'll second
Commissioner
it.
Jelinski. Any further discussion?
One question, Mr. Chair, to Chelsea. Whenever we look at doing things electronically, I'm assuming that you continue to have conversations with the IT department as far as updating and ensuring that we have security on all of this activity that goes forth to prevent hacking into our fiscal system, correct?
Correct, and I do believe your question more stems from the banking side. So on the banking side, when we go in to do electronic funds transfers, we have like a second authorization step into going into the bank and being able to authorize funding. So certain banks where we do electronic funds transfers, we have a token, and so we have to log in and press the token, enter a code, and then we'll get another code and we have to verify it. Another bank that we do EFTs with is we log in and then we may get an email or a text message with a security code that we then have to implement into that banking software in order to be able to even step into the account. So there are many safeguards in place, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And last but not least, I have a request to pay the bills.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. This is roll call. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson, aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly.
Thanks for coming down, Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Okay, next we got Public Works. Steve. Welcome to you.
Morning, Steve.
I just have one item for your consideration this morning. We have a structure over the two rivers on 20th Avenue in Elmdale Township that has become eligible for replacement. It's a 10 by 6 that was built in 1927. And the township has requested that we move forward with the replacement of that structure using town bridge funds. So our request to the board is that you would authorize a resolution entering into an agreement with Elmdale Township for replacement of this structure and direct the chairman and the administrator to sign the agreement.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Is there any further discussion? None, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Next, committee reports and upcoming schedules. Commissioner Jelinski, would you mind starting out?
Sure, I'm anticipating that we're going to start on or about August 1st and go till through the 14th. On August 2nd, I was supposed to hold the date for the 911 strike force, but I've got a dentist appointment that can't wait, so I'm going to be missing that. On Tuesday, the 3rd, at 8:30, we have a planning meeting, and at 6 PM, we have a Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting here at the Government Center. On the 4th of August, at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's an AMC coffee conversation virtual thing, and I'm actually going to try and be on that call. On Thursday, the 5th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a legislative committee meeting, which is virtual. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a 911 Strike Force Work Group 2 meeting. That is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On the 6th of August, at 8:30 in the morning, we have a Public Works Planning meeting. On the 10th of August at 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a county board meeting. On the 11th of August at 8:30 in the morning, there's a department head meeting here at the Government Center. On Thursday, the 12th, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a 911 Strike Force Committee meeting, Work Group 2. And if I didn't say it earlier, 7 days prior to that, that is also a virtual meeting. On the 13th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board RAC meeting, which I believe is also virtual at this time. And Mr. Chair, that should complete my calendar, I believe.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Blaine?
I don't believe I have anything to add, but I wanted to get clarification on the department head meeting at what time on the 11th?
8:30 in the morning.
8:30. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have on the 12th, I have trails at 6 o'clock. That's usually at City Hall. And that's all I have to add. Commissioner Lemire?
August 9th, Yellow Ribbon, 5:30. It has been virtual. The 14th, Lake Alec Property Owners Association meeting. That's at the Scandia Valley Town Hall, 9 o'clock a.m. And that's all I got.
Commissioner Wincher?
The only thing I want to do a little advertising, Saturday, Platte River Days this Saturday, the 31st, so otherwise you got me all called. Come on out for a great time, and we have the Fabulous Armadillos playing at 8 o'clock that evening, so.
Good. And don't forget, we have the fair this week if anybody's scheduled. I've got something on my calendar that says railroad. Is there something going on with the railroad for like this week?
Mr. Chair, there was going to be that public hearing, but that got
Changed.
moved
Oh,
to
okay,
August, and
good.
that's probably what you have.
I only wrote railroad, so I
Yep.
had no idea. I had to verify what I was had.
scheduled.
Okay, should we take a break for a few minutes?
If I could just kind of identify what the schedule is looking like. Commissioner Wilson and I were working on following up from the requests last week when it came to executive search and that process. And so I appreciate the feedback, and I followed up with all of the different names of either companies or individuals that did this work. We did hear back from Big River Group, and they have identified that they are out. Messages were left with the other two that were brought forward, a Novak Consulting Group or a JDG Associates. Haven't heard back from them yet, but contact was made. We do have interviews or proposal presentations, both from M&A Executive Search Firm and David Drown and Associates Search Firm today. M&A Executive is scheduled at 10:30. They'll be joining via Teams, and DDA is at 1. So we'll recess and then reconvene for that. That was the best we could do with schedules in terms of getting that in. Clifton Larson Allen contacted me yesterday. That's an accounting, I'm used to them as an auditing firm, but they're a very large nationwide company that does have an executive search branch. I spoke with the gentleman yesterday, drawing a blank on his name, Robert something. He did indicate he would submit a proposal by end of business day tomorrow. And so that will be forthcoming. I don't know what that will look like. He was out of the East Coast. Massachusetts, I believe, is where their, maybe that branch is located, just so you know that would be forthcoming. And I did speak with Southwest Service Cooperative. I left you a message and talked to you, Commissioner Winchester. And their focus area, while they've done some, have been really their service area down in the southwest part of the state. And so really weren't in a position to provide a proposal at this time for this service. And so that's been who I've been able to reach out to, continued contact with Baker Tilly, and have not been able to track down that company and that individual that leads that, but continuing to try that effort. So that's where we're at with that process. If there's anything else that I'm missing in terms of follow-up for you guys to get you information, please let me know. But otherwise, that's where we're at. Like I said, 10:30 is when the gentleman from M&A is scheduled to be on. If we could maybe recess until then, make sure he can get on that meeting, and then we'll break. And again, the food truck will be out there. Staff will be mingling. Hopefully there's participation. I did get some dessert, and thanks to the help that I got from others with drinks, and so there's water and soda there, but please stick around if you're able and visit and thank staff for that well-deserved recognition.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to make it quickly, we're continue getting, like Deb, she did a great job of reaching out to these search companies. Are we gonna put a deadline on this, or are we gonna make a decision today? Or since we have one coming tomorrow, I guess that would be something I think we should decide. Either we're gonna listen to 2 presentations today, possibly a 3rd one tomorrow, or what? Again, I understand this here, we cannot make a decision till a board meeting, but again, it's something I don't really wanna rush into, so just the thoughts and see what everybody else will say. Obviously, I'd like to listen to the one tomorrow too.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, just so you know, I'm just getting that proposal, and then I would,
See the
okay,
presentation, yeah,
yes,
thank you.
okay.
What does anybody else have to say about that? How do you want to
I
proceed?
think that particular establishment is from the East Coast, you said?
It's a national firm. The gentleman that would conduct that search, I spoke with yesterday was located in Massachusetts. That's all I know for that. They certainly do have locations throughout the U.S. in Minnesota presence, but I think that's more of their auditing side from what I understood, but I'd need to learn more from their proposal.
I think, I mean, personally, what I hear today from one of these individuals, if I think they're gonna offer a great product, I wouldn't have a problem with voting one of these in today.
Either would
myself.
I.
Commissioner Blaine, do you got any?
No, I'm open to the wishes of the board.
Okay. I guess I would like to do that too, if we feel anybody's qualified today to do this after listening to it, that we get the process going. It won't be long and Deb will be gone, and the faster we get this done and doing it right. But I think we need a search firm to help us do that process, so.
Clifton Larson Allen though too, you know, so everybody understands, Clifton Larson Allen has offices, you know, they have offices in St. Cloud, they have offices, I believe in Brainerd and Alexandria, they do.
Auditing.
They do, auditing, but they also do a lot of, business development work too, out there, but they're just more well-known for doing auditing, business auditing.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we take a sorry, what?
Dave, you're online, it sounds like, right?
I am.
How about if we take 5 minutes?
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess here, and then we're gonna reconvene and talk to you, if that's all right.
That'd be good. My business partner Chandler will be joining. Are you on, Chandler? No, he's not. But he's going to be carrying most of the presentation for us because I've got a conflict at 11 o'clock. So, but he's our original founder, so you're in good hands. Okay.
All right, sounds good. And just so you know, and if you could let Chandler know also that I will mute when you're speaking, and it'll help the feedback. But when I don't mute, and that's going to be required, obviously, if they have questions, you will get a delay in feedback on your end, but just so you know, it sounds perfectly normal from our end. So I try to mute when you're going through a dialogue and you're presenting, so you don't get that feedback, because it's a bit distracting, and I know that, but with the system and how it's coming through the room, that's kind of how we've been able to manage this as best as we can. So I'm going to admit Chandler here. I just saw that he's coming on, and I'll explain the same thing. Hi, Chandler.
Are you there?
Chandler, I see that you're on. Can you hear us? I'm testing the audio to see if we can hear you if you want to mute. Are you able to hear us, Chandler? Doesn't look like that's the case, Dave. His audio maybe is just starting here. Or he only connected with the video, perhaps. I can chat.
Chandler?
Oh, I bet he's calling in.
Hi, it's Chandler.
Hi, I see that you called in and then we can see you
Chandler.
there.
Is now joining.
All right, I just
Yeah.
put you on, I just chatted you. Thank you for joining us. As I was explaining to Dave, we're taking a short recess here and then we're going to convene. When you're speaking, you may hear a feedback, so I try to mute on our end while you're speaking so you don't hear that. And so, just so you're aware of that, and then it sounds perfectly normal on our side. It's just that with the room and the audio, how it's set up, you may get that feedback. So I'll try to manage that with muting when the gentlemen aren't speaking at the dais. But if you hear it, no, it sounds fine on our side.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, give us one moment and we'll be with you.
Okay, sounds great.
Sorry, JJ. Just
No, that's fine, sorry for,
not trying to shoot.
no, I don't, no, you're fine. I don't see your battery power on there,
I don't either.
but you've got to be charged up. Can I use your charger?
Yeah,
'Cause
I think I go down here.
I just hate to say. no,
Everybody's
there.
calendar looks okay for
Because
you, for the 2 weeks?
I can't believe it, but I forgot.
I don't know, understand why it drains. I shut mine off and it's still.
You know something, I do the same thing, when I shut mine off and then I go to open it next time, it's like the battery's dead.
Yeah.
I've got one of these for Sourcewell too, and same thing, and I don't know, I go in it and I hit shutdown, you know,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I don't know. Oh, Greg, did you have any questions for our attorney?
I just
Oh, you-
spoke with him, he was going up the stairs.
Okay,
and I
because
told him I
otherwise
should-
he'll come back, or,
No, he just told me he was gonna leave, he's at court hearings or whatever, and I said if I have other questions, I'll give him a buzz or whatever, but.
sounds good.
Neither do I.
Randy, you had the motorcycle out much?
Actually, yeah, I won't be here next week.
Next,
I'll be gone.
at the planning? Okay.
Yeah, because I'll be, well, at the planning a little bit, not for public works, because I'll be in Sturgis.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm leaving here today at noon, so I
Okay.
can't be around for the next one.
Do you,
I seen their proposal anyway.
do you, drive it all the way to Sturgis, or do you trailer it?
No, I ride.
I know a lot of guys trailer them out there and get close, then they ride.
Yeah, I heard, I don't know. Yeah, and then they always say, yeah, I trailered mine. They have shirts, I trailered mine in Sturgis.
Yeah.
But I've done both.
Well, they're getting older.
Yeah, but I'm going with another buddy of mine, and we power ride out.
That's a hard drive, though, when it's windy and hot.
Oh, my God.
So if I can ask the question, Mike, so how far or how much will, are you expecting or are you including Deb to be a part of the process here? Or is there
I guess
is there a
that-
point, to where that interaction, stops, or, I mean, has that discussion been had, or
I guess
are
my-
we going to have that discussion, or what's that?
Well, again, I don't, I want her to work with us to get this point, but as far as doing, researching applicants and doing.
No,
proper
that
time-
shouldn't be her job.
No.
I think her job, though, is to run the county till the day she leaves, just like she always has. I think
No,
that,
I mean this task at hand.
Well,
But, will she be sitting in on this presentation? Or the other one, or should she, or after this, does that?
I guess
does
we'll have
that
to have,
stop?
We'll have to have that discussion.
I don't think we need her here, I mean, because this is the board's decision, but that's, again, my opinion, you know? If she wants, she's got other things to do, I don't think she needs to sit on us, but she did a great job reaching out to some of these people.
Well, that's what I think she's
Well,
gonna do.
that's part of an administrative
Yeah,
role, but,
exactly.
so I was just, I'm just curious, I just wanna know.
I guess we have to talk about, that's not my decision. You know, we have to talk about that as a group, what you want her to do or don't. I want her to go and find information that we ask her to go find for us until we have a firm in place that can do that stuff for us and direct us.
And so that's kind of the question I'm asking, so then after that point, you know,
Yeah,
so, I was just curious.
I think that should be part of our discussion on what
So when would we have that discussion, at a planning meeting, or?
we can have it here today, I guess, because we gotta do it publicly. You know,
But I'm all for her to start tying up, like, that signing of the money to get transferred to Chelsea. Those are things that we can't just let them go. She has to.
Well, I almost,
I think you're.
I almost raised the question in the, in that document that, for Nicole Kern, now you're having Deb sign that as clerk of the board. You know, I think that we're at the point now where you need to transfer the responsibilities of the clerk to the county board.
So, but you.
I mean, that was, and she listed that as, you know, some of these things to do. Well, it's defined right in state statute. The clerk of the county board is the county auditor.
Right, yeah.
And so
That
that, in my mind, that process should start or at least be in play now. So now you have a document that's signed that really will have to go back and be addressed again when, you know, it's these kinds of things.
I am getting the printout for you here. I thought that's what she was doing, but she misunderstood me, so I am grabbing that for M&A.
Stay there.
Hello, Beth.
What's that mean? You didn't like me that close to
This
you?
is your chair, that's your chair.
It's on the printer right now. This is DDA's for later.
Right.
She printed out way too much.
Yeah, I got one.
Give me just a minute here and we'll convene if you don't mind.
And I think I know who I brought this up to about this other, one, I had another county commissioner, and if you want the names, they did.
Will you give me one? Yep.
Oh, yeah, you said that, yeah.
It's really strange one.
Thank you.
Where I belong.
Okay.
Chandler and Dave, if I could ask a quick question. I do have your presentation that you sent to me, but I also have it handed, I have a printout for the board, and I do have the presentation forwarded to them. Are you more comfortable if I share my screen and go through that, or would you like us to see you when you're speaking? Did you have a thought on that?
I think I'm going to introduce Chandler. I think he can just kind of talk through, you know, our firm and what we're about, and then possibly refer to the document. Chandler, does that work?
That sounds good.
I don't think we're not going to go through it necessarily, but I think Chandler will just talk to most of the points that are in there.
Okay.
Does that sound all right for you guys?
Is that
Sounds
okay,
good.
gentlemen? Yeah, I have that forwarded to you also in PowerPoint, so it's a little bit easier to read. I just wanted to give you a document to be able to take notes on. Does that sound sufficient?
Thank you.
All right. Are you ready to turn it over to them?
Yes. You go ahead. What's the gentleman's names?
Dave, Chandler, you're on.
All right. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dave.
Yeah, I had the initial discussion with Deb. My name is Dave Magnani. I've been with M&A Executive Search for a number of years, close to 5 years. Chandler is the original founder for M&A. He was the he was involved early on when we actually helped hire Deb into this role. And that's the reason why Deb reached out to us, because we originally hired her. So I'm just going to turn it over to Chandler, and he'll kind of talk you through what we bring to the table and what makes us different, and we'd love a chance to work with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I thought what we could do is, I start by asking if there's any specific questions you'd like us to answer or to go through, or if you just want kind of an overview and an understanding of our firm. What are your thoughts on that?
The overview first, we'll ask questions after.
Yeah, I think the overview of your firm and stuff, and then if we have questions, we can ask that. Thank you.
Fair enough. So real quickly, the overview, I was going to give you an overview and then some idea and some things that I think that make us a really good fit for this. So an overview in the firm is, we started in 2008. Greg Albrecht and myself started the firm. As Dave just mentioned, we helped and we did recruit Deb into this role. We've done quite a bit of county public service work through the years. We are a retained search firm. We've been always listed as one of the top search firms in the region, and recently, as Forbes magazine even listed us as one of the top 100 firms in the country. A couple things that kind of I think stand out that might make us really unique for this search, other than the fact that we had some success in the last recruit, last time we did this search. The second one is we really do specialize in human resources searches. We're doing at least one, it seems like, at any time. We're doing one right now. I've done multiple senior level HR searches. So this is an area that we specialize in. As I mentioned, we specialize in both public and private sector. Done a fair amount of work over the years in the public sector as well. We really focus on finding candidates that not just fit the role and kind of fit your criteria, but also fit your culture. And we have a proprietary culture fit that can help us ensure that we find people that fit your culture. The best way I can describe, some people ask me, tell me more about what you mean by culture fit. I guess the easiest way to say it would be, if you've ever had someone join an organization that you work in that didn't fit your culture, you'll understand the importance of what I'm talking about. And that is that we really spend a lot of time, of course, understanding what you're looking for in a director of HR in terms of accountabilities and the qualifications of the role. But when it comes down to making the final decision, it usually comes down to culture fit. We have a proprietary culture fit assessment. The organization would take it, the candidates would take it, and it would help us ensure that we find you the right person to fit long-term, culturally. Another thing I think that sets us aside is that I think a significant one is my understanding you've worked with another firm over the years that specializes in the public sector. In this case, I think that that may or may not serve you well. If you were to use a firm that specializes in the public sector, if they don't have hands-off, in other words, if they don't have agreements with the other county governments or government entities that they've done recruitment for, they should have. Meaning, if they specialize in government and public sector work, they likely can't recruit or would be uncomfortable recruiting some of these potential candidates if you're trying to recruit out of the public sector. As I mentioned, we do both. We won't have hands off. So that means we can recruit from virtually anybody. I think that's a significant differentiator. And then one of the other points that Deb brought up was the possibility that you may have interest in finding not only a permanent person for the role, but maybe an interim executive to fill this role. It's my understanding, Deb, you're moving on in a fairly short period of time, and there may be concern that we find someone to fill the role in the interim. And there may be some other positions that Deb mentioned that may be of use as well. So we have really three parts of our business, which is the traditional retained search, which is what we want to talk to you about, what we're talking about today. We have our interim and consulting practice, which places people on an interim or consulting basis. And then the final piece is and I should mention this goes back to our experience with human resources, we have roundtables. We have monthly roundtables. Things, of course, been a little bit different because of COVID, but we have a CEO roundtable, and we've also had a kind of a chief human resources roundtable through the years, which means we're really, really well networked for human resources executives. And then very quickly, my background, I've been doing search for over 20 years. Dave has joined our firm about 5 years ago. We have another person on the firm who's a former client, who's also a former chief human resources officer, another example of our reach in the human resources field. He joined our firm a couple of years ago. That's a quick overview. I can answer more questions and go into more detail you may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair, where are you people from? I mean, when I say that.
Minneapolis.
There you go. Thank you. That's good. That's good for me. Thank you.
Where is that?
Minneapolis.
Mr. Chair, if I just could, and Chandler, and just to remind you guys, I'm trying to, when I don't have it on mute on our side, they get that feedback when they speak. So I'm just trying to kind of delay it a little bit so that way it doesn't impact that. But we're off mute now.
Does anybody have any? Commissioner?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Blaine?
I have a couple, three questions here. Can you give us what you would consider to be a rough timeline, or what you would look at as a timetable that this board should expect in finding a successor in this position?
Dave, you want to take this one?
Sure. Well, typically for our searches, we will, usually it's about 30 to 45 days to actually find a candidate. It really depends on your decision process. We'll generate candidates that are interested within 2 weeks. And then we go through our process in terms of evaluating them for cultural fit and competencies and so forth. And then working in the public sector, we know that there's a whole nother decision process in terms of selecting the right candidate. And we help organizations, we facilitate through that decision-making process, but it really depends on the organization at that point. But we definitely would be in a position to present candidates within 30 to 40 days of when we start the search. And then from an interim perspective, we operate a little bit quicker in an interim. So we could put an interim candidate in place within 7 to 10 days typically.
So,
and that's all that are already established, ready to go.
So you're saying 30 to 45 days. So then I'm going to have to back up here a second. So does your firm, will your firm engage with this board in what I would look at as maybe some preparatory steps to just going out and casting a net for individuals or prospective interviewees, in the sense that we look at developing a qualifications list or document that would set qualifications, whether or not this board is looking for someone that would have various levels of college degree and education, the amount of experience, whether or not this board would hire someone who has experience as a county administrator, or what weight would this board put on a candidate who has no experience within county government and would come from the public sector, and/or what expertise would you give this board or lend to this board to try and help us decipher how a candidate like that should be viewed or measured? And I'll let you respond.
So if you look in the document, it lays out our process for retained search. And the first step for us would be exactly as you described. We're gonna develop a fit document, which basically lays out, working with the board to define upfront, what are the competencies, experiences that you're looking for in a candidate, and then also, as Chandler alluded to, we're gonna measure your culture as well. So that's part of establishing the foundation of what we're looking for, and that happens prior to really doing sourcing. But we can do that with our tools fairly quickly. And then we want to also, with this type of situation, we want to understand and gain consensus for what the decision criteria is going to be for the candidates up front. So we would want to understand who the decision makers are for selecting a candidate, and then we'd want to work with those people to kind of define the criteria, kind of using our frameworks of both competency and cultural fit, and gain consensus with you prior to introducing candidates. That directs our sourcing. And then it helps us more effectively evaluate the candidates as we get into the process. The other piece of the other thing that we bring in terms of process here is that we like to be highly transparent in terms of our process. So we would establish that up front, but we would share the pipeline as we go. Candidates, we allow clients to access our recruiter tools so they can actually view the pipeline, as we find that sometimes real-time input is helpful in fine-tuning the search as well. But certainly, we're going to spend a lot of time up front with your organization, really defining what you're looking for up front. Does that answer your question?
That helps me certainly in understanding your process. Another question I had, I like you do have good information here on post-hiring support, both for the potential hire, and I'm going to assume there will also be post-hire interaction with the board as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it really depends. We'll customize it however you want to do it. So if it's going to require you to, we have done facilitated processes with, public entities when there's been many decision-making, a very difficult, broad decision-making body. And we certainly would spend time with your group helping you through the decision and facilitating a process for doing that. But that's something that we would talk about up front when we talk about, how are you going to make the decision? And we would recommend a process for doing that, and we would definitely facilitate you through that process.
If I may, would part of that process include your help in evaluation of a new hire? Let's say at 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. Does your firm offer that as a service to help the board and that new hire achieve some synergy and some understanding on roles, responsibilities, and performance especially in that first year that I always look at as being critical? your comments.
Chandler, why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, so I'm going to try quickly, and Dave, you may have to take over. I've got some noise in the background. We have an integration process where we would have the newly hired incumbent work with the board in developing a 100-day plan. And the integration process, or the integration coach can be utilized beyond that 100 days. So the short answer to your question is yes, it is a part of our process. And this person would really help gauge not only they're doing the job, but are they effective communicator? How can they be a more effective communicator if there are challenges going on? They would help facilitate those kind of things. So in short answer, yes, we would do that.
I have one more question, or at least at this point, I have one more question, and I appreciate your dialogue. So when I look, you have a 1-year guarantee to this board, and I'm going to draw a scenario here, and so help me here. So Morrison County employs your services. We fill this position with a candidate that goes through the process. And let's say that after 90 days or X amount of time within, let's say 90 days, for example, 90 days, this board and or leadership within the county designates this as not being a correct fit. And we have to, this board is looking at having to choose separation again from this candidate. Now, obviously, we as a board understand the responsibilities of having to do that. But when it comes to our relationship with your firm in helping us with this process, how does the guarantee then work? Does that mean you will help us and we would go through this process again and there would be no charge? Or what? Help me out.
I can take it, Dave. Yeah, and yes, that's correct. You have a 1-year guarantee that if for some reason things don't work out, we would redo the search at no additional charge unless there were some out-of-pocket expenses. For instance, if we had to, if the candidate were to fly in and we paid for their, their flight expenses, we'd charge you back for that. Those kind of expenses. But there would be no additional professional services fees.
Thank you.
So the process would start over to some degree, but we would certainly have a good idea. We may have a good idea of what went wrong based on conversations, and we would, would re-engage and refill the search.
Thank you. Commissioner Jelinski's got a question.
Dave or Chandler, Commissioner Blaine kind of opened the door for this question. How much is this going to cost? And you got to have a figure, I'm positive of that, so what does it cost?
Yeah, it was 40.
50, 20% of what we're.
You guys go ahead and answer
Yeah,
that.
it's 20.
Thank you. I didn't see
Yeah, we bid, typically, we have higher rates, but for first-time clients, and for this search, we would do it at 20% of the first-year compensation, which is salary plus half of bonus. And we're open to negotiating a fixed fee as well, if that's something that you'd prefer.
And Mr. Chair, just to preface, when I spoke with Dave, I've always operated on the same pay scale that all other staff do. It is not uncommon that somebody in my position would have a separate contract, and then that includes their wage and whatnot. So I did let him know what the current pay scale is from where we have that identified in 2022. I think it went from the low end is 110 to just around 140 for that wage scale for this. But again, I've often seen a separate contract for this position. You guys will have to work that out on how you want to move forward with that.
Commissioner Wincher?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This is for either one of you. I don't know, one of you said you had to leave at 11 o'clock, am I right, or is that? I don't know.
Yeah, I had a client call.
No, that's fine. Again, I'm one person here on the board. Based on what I read here and everything, to clarify, when we are requesting for an applicant, are we the ones that are going to determine what the qualifications are going to be? Or are you gonna come in and sit down with us and say, okay, this is what we recommend, but what happens if one commissioner wants this, I want this? You have to bring us all together, I'm assuming, to see what the qualifications will be. Also, do we get to see, once we agree on what our qualifications are gonna be and the salary and all that stuff, do we get to see all the applicants, or do you, let's say you get a handful of them in, well, throw this one out, throw that one out, for your reason how you do the hiring? But as far as me, I like looking at all the applications and say, okay, give me a reason why you're taking this one out. And once that goes forward, I'm throwing a lot of questions out there, do they come in and meet in person with us? Or are you gonna have, say, okay, I'm gonna meet with this person from this state or city through Zoom? I despise listening to people over, you can't see and whatever, for applications. Now, you two is fine having a discussion, but when it comes down to hiring somebody, I like seeing them in person. So there's a few questions. Good luck on all of them.
Dave, do you want to start? I'm going to move to a different location where I don't have the background noise. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're transparent in the process. So all of our clients, as a candidate shows interest in the position, we put them in our recruiting tool, and that's prior to really evaluating them fully. So at any time, and we'll provide a link to our recruiter tool, at any time you can go in, anyone can go in and look at the candidates that have shown interest and make comments on them, or so we're totally transparent in the process. And then we just continue to go down our process of evaluation based on the initial criteria that we've established until, but we appreciate any type of feedback. So people that like to look at every candidate, that can be very helpful because it gets us in sync with what you're looking for as we're going along. A lot of times people, they don't know exactly what they're looking for until they see it. So we find it helpful, and it's very, like I said, it's transparent, but it's very easy for somebody to look at that and give feedback and write notes on candidates as we're going through the process. So what are the other parts of the question?
One break.
I'm sorry. So the part is, who determines the qualifications? Are you gonna come and sit and, if we bring you on as our search company, who determines that? Do you work with us? Do we work with that? And then go from there?
Yeah, we work with you. We would typically interview all the decision makers to try to understand what they're looking for, build up the criteria, both a fit document perspective and from other considerations, and play that back to you until we got consensus, is the approach that we typically take. So that's going to be, we're going to work with you up front to really define that. And that's before we get going substantially in evaluating candidates. But just to meet timelines and stuff like that, we may start sourcing in parallel with that, but we're not going to really make decisions on candidates until we've had the input from you.
That's for now, I'm good.
Yep.
Commissioner?
May I add to that?
Yes.
I think it's a collaboration of helping the decision be made in terms of what you're looking for. So we would interview each of the board members who's involved in the search committee, maybe that's every one of you. And we would certainly have opinions about what would be the right kind of criteria and qualifications you should be looking for to fill this role. We will certainly guide you in that process. But, you are going to be the final decision makers in terms of what's the best fit for your organization. It would be a collaboration to get to that point. So initially, the very first step of the process is to walk through and to interview all of you folks to determine what we're looking for and to build that consensus. I think there was a point made up. There's some people in that may not agree on every point, and that's very typical. So that's something we would work through with you and help build the consensus as well. From those discussions, we will build what we call a position profile. And if you look on our document, we talk about this. So the position profile is a document that's used it's used for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's used to, I'm just going to make sure I have the right the competency fit document. It's discussed as there. So the purpose of that is to make sure that we are on the same page. And that's discussed under process on our PowerPoint presentation. And then from there, when we go out to identify candidates, they're evaluated based on the fit document. And again, that's all based on the conversations we have with you folks. And in terms of interviewing candidates, you can interview as many as you want or as few as you want. I would suggest that let us guide you to present probably the better candidates, and we will give you some narrative as well as written documentation about the candidates. So the narrative will come from us in terms of why we think they're a good fit or a better fit. So you don't, part of what you're paying us for is you don't want to interview 20 people. You probably want to interview the best of, we'll reach out to well over 100 people, and you want to interview the best of those. And then narrow down from there. And we can help you develop questions for the interview process as well and facilitate the interview process. And then we get to the point where we're evaluating the candidates and making a decision. So did that help give some more color and some depth to that question you had?
Yes, it did. You know what, now, how about the privacy again with the government? Some people may not want to apply because they don't want their name out there at this time. Is that something that is kept under wraps, or is that always public knowledge if, I'm going to use Commissioner Jelinski decided to apply for the administration job, but he doesn't want to, but he wants to keep his name private until the final whatever interviews come.
Chandler, are you aware of that data
Yeah,
practices?
that's fairly common in these searches. And, you're right. I mean, some candidates are not going to want to be, they're not going to want it made public that they're part of the process, and then we'll have to wait as long as we can to the point you just made. But we have to follow the process.
Mr. Chair, if I just could weigh in a little bit. That's a unique factor when it comes to public search and public employment. Brian will be very involved in the redacting of data, because once something's shared with you as a board, as you're well aware, then it becomes technically public data, but we're always beholden to redact what isn't public data. And so that's something I've actually worked with boards a number of times when we've interviewed and we've presented candidates and making sure that what's presented to you is only public information. And that's often why a search firm is used, to narrow those candidates down, because once selected for an interview, they're determined a finalist, and law says we have to make them public if requested to do so. And so Brian will work with you hand in hand to make sure that you're following those data practices rules, and that is something that makes it unique in public employment when it comes to these types of exercises. We are beholden to a bit more law when it comes to that.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions? Commissioner Jelinski.
Gentlemen, you alluded to your fees and your flexibility and your affordability, and that you're fair, and I'm certainly not suggesting for 1 second that you're not. So someone is hired here in Morrison County as an administrator. In today's world, can you tell me, are we hiring that person independently on a contract, year to year, on a 5-year contract, on a 3-year contract, or are we hiring that person as Ms. Gruber, if you will, as an employee and as the administrator at so many dollars a year, whatever it might be. What is happening in today's world, and I don't mean to make Ms. Gruber look or sound older, but it was 10 or 12 or 15 years ago when she was hired as a county administrator in Morrison County. Now, I'm going to be open and honest about this whole thing. I don't know. That's why we're having the conversation today. So are most administrators hired in the world we live in today on an independent contract? Or are they part of the team like everybody other, any other department head, if you would? Maybe you can answer that. Maybe you can't. I don't know.
Yeah. So in most cases, I would say they're employees of the county or the organization they're with.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
There are examples. There are certainly cases where they want to be on a contract, but sometimes the contract is also a contract that describes, for instance, the condition that they would leave the organization. It isn't necessarily a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contract. The majority of the time, they're employees of the organization.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lemire?
Yeah, ready? Yep. In your overview, you mentioned that your company might be a little better for us because you work in both the public and the private sector versus a company that mainly works within the public sector doing these searches. Can you elaborate on that, please? Why you think you would be better?
Well, I think there's 2 points to that. And the first one is, so the first point that I wanted to make was they may have what we refer to as hands-off. So, for example, if the organization you've used for years in other searches, if they're hired by another, just we're using this as a scenario, let's say the same firm that you've used is hired by another county to do their director of HR search. Well, you certainly would hope, and they probably, in our code, I mean, you generally would not recruit from a client organization. So my point is if this is an organization that you've worked with in the past who specializes in doing government and county searches and city searches, they're likely going to have a lot of client relationships that they don't. First of all, they shouldn't, because it's kind of the unwritten rule. In some cases, it is written that they won't recruit from those organizations. So it narrows the pool of candidates that they can recruit from. I think that's the first point I want to make. The second point is that because we do work in both sectors, it just extends our ability to recruit folks from a larger pool, not just in the government and public sector, but also in the private sector. And as I mentioned before, we're well networked in the human resources field. And not only doing human resources searches, but also we run roundtables for human resources executives. So we're well connected with other human resources executives. The way our process works to identify talent is we don't just, in fact, we're not a big believer in running ads. We run ads for the, in cases like this, you generally have to and want to run an ad, but you don't necessarily find the best people through advertising. We find the best candidates through direct sourcing, meaning we reach out to organizations that we've identified are the kind of organization you want to recruit from. They might be a city, they might be another county, or you may say we'd be open to some private companies. We'd have to define what those would look like. And we would reach out directly to those human resources leaders and approach them about the opportunity. And many of those people are not looking at advertising and therefore would not be a candidate. But if we're reaching out directly to them, oftentimes they will become candidates. So those are the 2 points. The first one is we're not going to have the hands-off that a firm that specializes in public and government sector searches has. And secondly, we just would have a broader pool because we do both private and public sector work.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? I can certainly give you more detail.
Yes, it did. I'm going to go to your fees page. And you have the total fees, 20% of the first year compensation. Is that going to be the total amount? Or on the other stuff, it's kind of vague on like the bullet point, flexible arrangements for candidate comparison and fee-for-service arrangements. It mentions sourcing only, evaluation only, use of cultural survey, customized fixed fee pricing based on desired services. Could you explain that bullet point to me, please? Is that an additional to the total fees of 20%?
So some of this would be, yes. So for instance, the integration services, let me back up. Because our fees are discounted heavily, our normal fee is a third of total compensation, 33 1/3% of total compensation. We have proposed 20% of total compensation, and total compensation is base salary plus half a bonus. And the way we can do that is we can remove some of our services, okay? So what we're talking about, let me get back to that point, make sure I'm reading the right thing here. Oh, come on. Here it is. What they're talking about there, on that, are you talking about the second to last bullet that starts with flexible arrangements?
Yes.
So in some cases, organizations will say to us, we've already identified candidates, we're down to the final 2, but we like your culture assessment. Could we engage you to use your culture assessment? Or could we engage you to do evaluation only or sourcing only? So in some cases, we will break out our services, but in this case, everything would be included with the exception of executive integration. In that case, that would be an additional $1,000.
Okay. And then, reduction of fee.
So,
can you explain the last bullet point,
yeah, so
please?
I think I maybe confused things a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. The last bullet point is the discount for multiple searches. So if you engaged us in more than one search, we could discount our fees further. But let me back up. I want to make sure you understand. I think I made that a bit confusing. In this case, we've been proposing to do the full search. So our fee would be 20% of first year compensation. We would not be charging additional for anything other than executive integration. And we talked about that. That's that follow-up that would happen 100 days, in increments on a quarterly basis for up to a year. That would be in addition to that. There would be no additional fees. So we wouldn't charge you additional, for instance, for sourcing, for evaluating, or for conducting our culture assessment.
Okay.
But no additional fees. That's included.
Very good. And then, how about the last bullet point? Can you explain that one?
So if you decide to engage, so in this case, we're not talking about multiple searches. What we could do if you engage us in this search, and then somewhere down the road here, let's say in the next, let's say a month or 2 later, you decide to engage us in, I understood there might be some other needs in engineering or something like that. We would work with you on those searches, and we would discount those future searches below 20%.
And then lastly, the interim candidate. You said that you could have an interim candidate here in approximately 7 to 10 days. I assume the compensation for that would be additional above the 20%. And then is that, how is that determined, I guess?
It's a good question. So interim consultants are paid on an hourly basis, and our fees would be included on their hourly rate. And the way we would, there are 2 ways to think about an interim solution. The interim person could become the full-time hire, in which case our fees would be, in which case there would be a conversion fee. Basically, what that means is you would be paying, let's say, use an example, you hired an interim person, they've been working with the county for 60 days, we'll say. We wouldn't charge you 20%. In addition to that, we would charge you a rate that would be reduced based on the hours they've worked. And I can send you a separate document that shows you the chart. It's a chart that based on the hours they work, the conversion fee goes down. And the conversion fee is based on a percentage of their base salary and total compensation. If, however, the second alternative would be you needed an interim person, but they were not going to be the person you were going to hire full-time, then you would pay the person on an hourly basis, and you would engage us to find a person for a full-time permanent position at 20%, as we've talked about.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Chair, just for the sake of argument, I look at the 20%, and I'm going to be very open with you folks, is that I come from a country school math class, okay? So when we talk about percentage of this and percentage of that, that doesn't necessarily mean a great deal to me. But at 20%, I'm going to anticipate we're talking about anywhere from 24,000 maybe to 30,000, plus everything else. What I'm looking for is a rough number. At the end of the day, what is Morrison County going to rate you a check out for? Is that fair? Is that a fair question, or is it not?
Approximate?
Approximate number. I'm not looking for, it is going to be $30,375.69. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, come on, give me an idea here.
Sure. Yeah, so if you hired the person at 110,000, plus I don't know what the bonus is, so that fee would be 22,000. Plus, if you use integration, it's additional $1,000, so it'd be $23,000.
Okay, we don't talk bonuses.
They were on
in
the
Morrison
higher end
County.
of the range, I think.
And it's strictly salary in public sector, Chandler, so there wouldn't be any type of bonus
Oh, it is,
situation.
okay, so that makes it easy. Yeah, so that makes it much easier. So it'll range from 22 to 28,000.
That's what that is exactly
And
what I'm
that's
looking
based
for.
on a base salary of, yeah, okay. Now, the other way to think about this is we could also discuss a fixed fee. And essentially a fixed fee would be just what it sounds like. We could negotiate a fee that's probably somewhere in the middle of that. That's generally what we do. Your range is between 110 and 140,000. We would even do it on the low end. And let's say we would say let's just agree that the candidate for fee purposes would be based on 120,000. Our fixed fee would be $24,000. So we could fix it at that number, plus $1,000 for the integration, and that's what your fee would be. Now, the advantage of that is you know what your number is. The disadvantage of that is if you hire someone less than 120,000, then you've paid more than market rate. If you hire someone above 120,000, you've actually paid less than 20%. You're getting a further discount.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blaine, I think you had another question.
Yep.
I do, and the other question I have is, you talked about, or touched a little bit on how you would reach out to potential candidates out there, and that you don't really throw an ad out there, and I understand all that. My question goes to what would the process be, and how would this be handled if there would be interest from a candidate within the organization currently, or if Commissioner Winchell decides that he wants to expand his role and be considered as a candidate for the, and I'm talking facetiously, of course, but can you explain though, maybe this organization has individuals that would show interest into further serving the county in a greater manner? How would that happen, or how do you approach that with your organization?
Great question. It's a very common occurrence, and we actually encourage our clients to I guess, how do we share the names of folks that are in their network, because oftentimes you or folks would be good candidates for this. they would be included in the process. They would go through the same evaluation process with our firm, meaning we would meet with them in person or meet with them via Zoom or whatever works. And we would provide the same evaluation process, and they would be given the same evaluation tools that when we come to the board to present candidates, those people would be included as well. But then you'd be able to compare them to the other candidates just as you would if they were sourced by us alone, meaning they would be given the subjective assessment that we would be providing for any candidate.
I have one more clarifying question, if I may. In reference to process, so would you or someone from your organization or your team, would you be in the room in that as part of a facilitating process in the interview process with let's say we narrow the field down to 5 prospective candidates that we would choose to interview, or 3, or whatever that magic number is when we're getting closer to the end game. Are you or Dave or one of your associates, do you partake in being a part of that process or facilitating part of that process, or where is your interaction at that point in the process, if you don't mind?
Yeah, again, good question. And very common in a search of this kind is that we do 2 things. First of all, if the board would like, we could provide not only the evaluation documents that you'll already see, but we could also provide interview questions for you. And then secondly, I guess, we could certainly be, one of us could be on site. And the purpose there would be to help facilitate the process, help answer questions about candidates, generally just facilitate the logistics of the day as well.
Sorry, I have one more.
Good question.
Thank you. So in this process, let's say that you and your organization puts forward, we have the ability to review all of the applications. And let's say, just for example's sake, let's say we have 80 candidates who've shown interest from all across the country, the state, whatever. Through your help, and guidance and the process, we've narrowed this down to, let's say 10, and then we've further narrowed that down to 5, and then we do interviews, this board, and in that process, we do interviews on those 5 candidates. Let's say that this board determines, for example, that we are not comfortable with any of those 5. We know they're good candidates, but we still are torn on the sense that we aren't comfortable enough to add one of those individuals to fill this need. From your organization's perspective and from the relationship that we would have in the contract, what options do we have, and what role do you play at that point, and or are in this agreement to work together? Are we obligated to say to have to take one of these people in that process? And I'll wait.
So I guess the easiest way to answer your question is we will work with you until we find the right person. Now, we hopefully do enough work up front to narrow things down so that a situation like that doesn't occur any more often than necessary. So that's part of the reason we want to spend a fair amount of time up front interviewing board members, building consensus, and discussing some of those issues up front, as well as through the process. and identifying the pluses and minuses of a candidate. Because you're right, not everybody's going to, you know, when you got a board like yours, not everybody's going to agree on everything. But and part of what we're really good at is facilitating that and, you know, managing through that process. That's not to say we're going to change anybody's mind, but we want to facilitate through that. So I think, again, to review, no, you're not contractually obligated to, nor otherwise. We would work with you until we find the right person to fill this position. And hopefully through the process, we'll be able to make sure that you don't have to take more time than necessary and you can find someone to fill this role quickly. Because, you know, Deb's going to be leaving and you're going to need someone in this position.
Any other question, guys? Commissioner Jelinski?
I just have one more question. And a percentage is good on this one, and I'm going to be fine with it. There's 87 counties in Minnesota. Can you guys tell me what kind of a percentage that you have had in finding an administrator in 87 counties? And I can't believe, but maybe you have, touched all of them, in which case it's 100%. I understand that very clearly, and maybe you can't answer it, I don't know, but 10%, 50% of Minnesota, you have helped, 80% you've helped with this function that we're looking at? That would be my question. And that's the last one I believe I have.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. We've done over the years work with multiple city and county agencies in the region too, not just in Minnesota. But the number's probably in the 15 to 20% range. But let me follow up with that. I often get asked this question, and I think why people ask that question is they want to know how much expertise we have working with organizations like yours. And I think the answer to that is you can probably find somebody with more experience, but I don't, in terms of working with a government organization. But what we specialize in is finding the right person for your organization. And we do that by kind of the steps we talked about. Spending a lot of time with you folks up front, understanding what your need is, evaluating candidates, and facilitating the right ones, and then also including a culture assessment. We have found that we have a very low turnover in terms of the people we place, some of the lowest in the industry because of these processes and systems that we use. And I will tell you that, you know, you talked about how, and one person brought up, how has the market changed since Deb was placed? One of the things that's changed is that search firms used to have to specialize in industries, and they had to do it because it was very difficult to identify people. These days, I guarantee you, I can reach out to every director or every HR leader in every county of this state, plus Minnesota and others, just as easily as any other search firm. So the thing that has changed with technology, and we still have our own databases, is that we have the ability to reach out to just as many people as any other search firm does. So my point to every potential client organization, be it a board with a public entity or private entity, is put less emphasis on whether the firm has experience in an industry, because generally they're asked that question because they want to know what our pipeline looks like, what our database looks like. And databases really are not what they used to be. Really spend your time trying to find a firm that understands you as an organization, can find you people that fit you and fit you long term. And that's what we specialize in. So I hope that answers the question, and then a little more.
And it did. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Lemire?
Could you elaborate on your scientifically cultural fit analysis that you use? Could you just give us a broad picture on how you go about that?
Yeah, it's very simply, and there's an example of it in the.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, so let's see, it's page 1. It's the page with all the colored bars.
5 or
Number, I don't
6,
believe.
the one that I can't read or the one I
But
can
the way
read?
it's done is, yeah, well, there's two versions of it.
Yeah.
One is kind of a blow up of it.
Yeah, I'm on the blow-up one.
And there's a red, the blow up one, okay.
Yeah.
So, but I think your question is how is it done and how is
Yes.
it executed is pretty simple. It's I believe it's 23 online questions that the organization takes. And that helps us define what the organizational culture is. And then the candidates take the same assessment. Again, 23 questions. They're the same questions, but asked differently. And they ask questions about what kind of an organization would you like to work in, as opposed to tell me what the organization is like to work for. That last question I just shared with you is that would be the organizational assessment. What it does is it provides us, first of all, it provides us an assessment that tells us what the culture assessment is for the organization. And then the candidates take that and we can compare the two results. So we get the document you're looking at, they both look identical, but the results may differ. And that's what we're looking for. We're trying to find out if the example given here is that there's a person who is, if it's highlighted under action-oriented and loyal, and that person tends to like to work in that kind of a culture. Well, we would have the results from the organization, and if it's in the blue category, it's generally a good fit. And we will walk you through this. There's more detail to this than that, but it's a very simple process to take, and it takes 5 minutes to take the online assessment, maybe 10 if you're interrupted.
Okay.
That's how it's executed. But does that answer your question, though?
Yeah, very much so. I'm glad you told me about the questionnaire. That makes complete sense now to me. But when you say the organization takes the test, would it be all 5 commissioners, or would it be a couple commissioners, a couple people that work in the immediate office with the administrator, or how do you determine who within the organization takes that quiz, or that whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. So that is determined by, I think the best way to think about this, and we would have to work with you to figure that out, is sometimes we take two organizational assessments. For example, it may be a different culture working with the board than it would be working with the leaders in the county administration. And that's a likely outcome. In that case, we might do 2. So the easy way to, I guess the way to think about this is we would have the people that would take with this would be the people that they would be working with on a regular basis. Because what we're trying to find out is what is the culture like? And the culture is, it really is, the people that they're working with on a day-to-day basis. So who are those people? And who are those people that exude that kind of culture you're trying to either build or change in some cases? But what we have found is that in cases like this, the board will take the assessment and the administration will take the assessment. We'll have 2 results, and that'll help as well, because we can get a better sense of whether or not they're going to be able to work with both the leadership and the board.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? If not, I thank you very much. You've given us a lot of information, and we will get back to you with more questions or telling you what we did or whatever. Thank you, Chandler.
Thank you for your time. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to be taking a recess.
Chandler.
Is now exiting.
We're going to be taking a recess till 1 o'clock.
Can I just add a couple of things that I was hoping to get some direction on and input on? Because I heard a few things last time that I was talking with Commissioner Wilson about whether or not you wanted me to follow up on. When it came to interim options, if you wanted to pursue any, I did reach out to surrounding counties as what Commissioner Blaine had identified, and I'd done that previous, just not in great extent, because I didn't really know where the conversation was going to go or what you wanted, if anything, from me in that regard. But there is consideration being given to that request to see what options exist, whether or not a surrounding county could provide assistance, because you're right in the fact that often we help each other out when there are holes and when there are needs within our organizations. And so that could be a potential option that could be further vetted. I think there are also opportunities with others that either have been in this field or closely worked with these fields for potential options with that. Again, certainly can explore those avenues if you want to see options. In addition to internally, I know Commissioner Wilson has had some conversations. I have also, I think we run very lean, and the capacity is somewhat difficult when it comes to that, but I absolutely know you have a team that will step up if asked, because they always have. And so if you want me to explore any of those and provide options to you, I certainly can do that, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page with what it is you'd like, and you know, what you don't.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I guess the question I would have for myself even is, are we willing to pull somebody, a department head, to be an interim if they, you know, if they'd be interested in it? You know what I'm saying? So does that department head have the time, or they think they have the time and they don't? See what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not sure what you mean by pulling, because I don't.
Well, because obviously they'd be part of, they'd want to be an interim, so let's say a director from this department head say, well, I can be an interim till this process. That's what I meant. You're gonna pull some of their time that they're using as being department.
Right.
That's what I meant by that.
What I've, from the ones that I've talked to and discussed this with, most of them feel like they have too busy of a schedule this time of year to even do that. But they've also, if that's what we choose to have them as a group or individual help, they possibly would do that, but I have not talked to all of them. Nobody's come forth to say anything, so I guess that's kind of where it's at, you know. Just because we want them to don't mean they want to. And we still have to have somebody that's qualified to do it.
My personal perspective on this, I'd like to wait to have that discussion. And I appreciate what you've done, Deb, and I appreciate you following up, you know, with some of the comments that we made, and with surrounding counties and internally and things like that. One of the points that you made before, you know, the county's in pretty good position, you know, and we don't have, you know, we don't necessarily have wheels falling off the train here or anything, so I'm comfortable that we can kind of guide this for, at least in the immediate future, meaning the next week or two, that I'm hoping we can have some time to digest these proposals and discuss this, and then also look at, you know, kind of the document that you gave us a week ago that listed, you know, some of the things happening, some of the things that would have to be addressed, and addressed in this interim period, or in this period between now and September. And I think, you know, this board's gonna have to look at addressing some of those things, then look at how we address this will we need interim leadership, and for how long, and then how do we do that? You know, I'll be honest with you, I was surprised by the timelines, the confidence that this firm has in timelines here, and it's and I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't think it's good or bad or anything like that. It's just, it was a shorter window than what I was necessarily expecting. And so, and we'll see though, as these other proposals come forward, and then we'll go from there. But that's my thoughts right now on that. And so I wouldn't be asking you to continue to spend time digging into that right now, but if there's things that we find through discussion that we'd like you to, obviously we're gonna request that.
And I guess I requested it so that I could come to the board with some options on what we're gonna do here. You know, what's out there, who's out there, what do they charge us? Those are the different options that I wanted Deb to find out for us, so that, because she's gonna be gone in less than 5 weeks. And we can only make decisions every 2 weeks, so we don't have a lot of time to help find some of that stuff. And me personally, I want to use her to help find information and stuff, you know, because we have to use somebody. And she's here till September 3rd. So that's probably some more discussion that we have, but all of our discussion's got to be right out here, you know, so. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, no, Mr. Chair, I was just, you know, you set out that kind of that 5-week timeline here, and that we, you know, we only meet or we only make decisions every 2 weeks. Certainly, Mr. Chair, you understand the importance and of this timeframe that we're under, not just the next 5 weeks, but going forward. You know, I'm certainly expecting that if the need arises, this board will adjust that schedule within the public limitations that we have to, and the public notice that we have to, that if this board needs to meet to make decisions that are necessary in this process, then we'll meet. And if, like we have in the past, where we've had to maybe either change a planning session to an actual executive board meeting. Would that be fair to say?
What is the timeline for public notice?
72 hours, I heard.
No, that's an emergency meeting, is the 72 hours. It's typically, I think, 5 days. Why am I drawing a blank on this? 10. Yeah, 10, okay.
10 days.
Okay.
And it would not be an emergency, it would be.
Yep, just,
Well, but we can meet a little sooner than that if we have to, and I have a feeling when this thing starts, we probably will have to do some of that.
Yep.
You know?
And
Yep.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner has brought up to attention that we may have more interviews. We're only, apparently we want just to have the 2. We don't want to take the one tomorrow. We'd like to make a decision today. Is that what we're
Maybe.
stating?
I don't know. I would like to move it as fast as we can.
Because if we put it off until tomorrow, because obviously
Yeah.
it was brought up that they may want to present, then we got 2 weeks, we can't make a decision. Again, they're
Yeah.
just throwing that out there on the wishes of the board, so I guess that's.
In
where-
my eyes, I see that this looks like a pretty good candidate that's in Minneapolis or in Minnesota here. And we have the other one that's kind of in the area doing stuff. I won't have a problem making a decision, I think we can, but I don't know that. I want to listen to his. And I guess we'll determine after the fact if we want to vote or we don't want to vote or want to wait for more. I don't have the answers for those questions, so. Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, and I want to go back to Ms. Gruber's statement. I personally have to agree. And I'm looking at Beth right now because she's in the room. And that's all I'm doing. So I'm using Beth as the example. Beth, would you be the interim person for the county until we get things going here? Beth would say, you know, I've got my hands full, but like every county employee that we have, Beth would say, I don't want to do that, but if I have to, I'll figure it out. However, I go back to the word that Ms. Gruber used, and she used the word lean. I truly believe that our department heads, and I'm not singling anyone out, so I'm taking Beth out of the equation. I'm not singling anyone out. They're all operating on a pretty lean budget. Would they answer yes to the question, if that is how the direction would be? I believe they probably would, but I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair at all. But I personally like the idea of, is there another county out there that would be able to help us in the interim? Is there another professional out there that would be able to help us during the interim? I like those two options. I do, but I think we have to be very careful that we're not going to throw on any of our department heads, whoop, here we go, we're going to put you in here for the next, pick a number, month, 6 weeks. I don't know. Now, this outfit was very clear in saying that in a few days, they could have an interim here. I mean, pick the number, whatever it might be here. Don't know. Just my thoughts.
Well, we don't need an interim till September 3rd, right?
That's correct.
I mean, that's the.
Well,
I would-
that's really
Unless you
true.
got somebody
We
that
don't.
comes in a little early to get some information and so forth, but, I don't know, guys, any thoughts on what you want to do here after we hear the other one? I mean, I think we got to hear the other one.
I want to hear the other one. I definitely want to
No
hear the
question
other one.
about it. Yeah, no, I'm not going to vote for this one right away. We got to hear everything. But I guess the question is, do we want to vote today? Or do we want to wait and see what else comes in?
I don't think you can ask that question,
I'll know
Mr.
more
Chair.
after the next one.
Yeah, till we hear the next.
Well, I thought that was your question.
Pardon me?
I thought that was your question to begin with. Are we going to listen to the one tomorrow?
I didn't ask that question, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Winter did.
Okay.
But, you know, I just, you know, we just had one proposal, you know, revealed to us here now. You know, my original question, or my original wish, request, whatever, was I would have liked to have 3 to consider, you know, so we don't just look at one and say, well, this is great, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we may look at the next, we may think this is really great, and then all of a sudden we come back here at 1 o'clock and look to that one and think, wow, that's really great.
Yeah.
So then it makes you, in your mind, it makes you wonder, well, how great could another one be? And what will we learn from this one this afternoon that we didn't think of in the one that we just went through? I do understand the desire to make a decision and get started and let's go and get after this thing. But I'm gonna reiterate the point I made before. I'm not interested in doing this fast, I'm interested in doing this right. And I'd rather only do this once. So, as Deb told us, you know, we're in a pretty good place within the county. We can, you know, I think we can figure out how to manage things here. It's going to take more work and it's going to be a little bit more intense at times, but I think we can manage this thing, but be able to take a methodical approach and do this right. Not saying that we can't do it fast and do it right, but I think the emphasis has to be on doing this right, not doing it fast. So that's I'm not gonna say anymore.
Commissioner Winter.
Again, we all agreed at the last meeting that we want the best candidate as
Yeah.
possible. I mean, there's no bottom line. We don't want to rush that, and that's why we want to make sure we, you know, interview if someone has to be delayed or whatever. This is kind of the same thing. If we only listen to 2 and we have the availability to listen to 3, maybe that's the diamond in the rough. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Do we give them a chance? If we don't give them a chance, did we get the best search committee? I don't know. Again, I don't think this should be rushed. And yet, maybe this here, I'm just gonna use this one, the one we just listened to. Yep, they're the one. And again, tomorrow or at 1 o'clock, they're the one. Well, who is the one? See, we're not giving this other search committee a chance. But again, time constraints are there, but it's been brought up. We're very solvent. I think we have a great department heads that can push forward, but that's just my 3 cents, so.
And I'm comfortable in listening to what these people said today.
Well, very
I gotta be very honest with you, this was a good presentation as far as I was concerned. They answered my questions. If the next operation that we listen to at 1 o'clock is on the same page, let's just say, I don't need to hear. The 3rd one, oh, they were pretty good too, or the 4th one, so then I'm gonna start picking and choosing. This outfit sounded fine. I'm anticipating the next one's gonna sound fine too. I'm interested in staying in Minnesota also. To talk to somebody from Maryland, and that's where maybe the division is, I don't know and I don't care. I'm interested in being where we are, so.
Anybody else?
See what happens, I don't know.
Anybody else got anything? Otherwise, Otherwise, we'll be listening to the next one, and we'll decide after that if we have more questions, if we want to talk more, or whatever.
Yep.
Okay, we're having recess till 1 o'clock, and then we'll come back and we'll be getting a presentation from David Drons and Associates.
Yep. And just for Zach's information, I'm gonna leave the meeting and I'm gonna start it again at 1 or shortly there before.
Yeah, we won't.
Perfect. That works great.
Thanks. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah. could
We're
be.
recessing?
Okay, we're recessed.
Okay.
Thank you.